All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Stissen. This is Mobile Growth Podcast, where we discuss how to launch, grow, and successfully monetize mobile apps. And we invite industry experts to learn everything from product to user acquisition and monetization strategies. And today, our guest is Dominic Gallello. Dominic is former Chief Marketing Officer at Bumble. I'm sure most of you are aware of Bumble. It's one of the most popular dating apps on the planet. And in 2021, the company went public, and currently it's valued at something around $5 billion. Hi, Dominic. Maybe you can add something to your bio if you'd like.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Michael. It's great to be here. So I'm Dominic Gallello. I'm presently Managing Director of Digital at Bridgepoint, a mid-cap private equity firm based in London with presence all over Europe. My history has been largely in growth and marketing roles within the consumer internet. Most recently as Chief Marketing Officer at Bumble, where I served through a transition from private ownership through to a Blackstone acquisition through to a NASDAQ IPO. I'm a hybrid marketer. I, have grown up as a brand marketer, but have evolved into the world of growth. And it's a great opportunity to be here and share any learnings that may be valuable to some of your listeners today.
Awesome. Thanks so much for doing this podcast. And probably the first question I have is, did you join as Chief Marketing Officer of the company, or you grew into that position inside the company?
So I initially joined the group of apps as Chief Marketing Officer of Badoo, one of our other dating apps that is mostly popular in Eastern Europe and Latin America, but with global presence. Badoo is an app that has over 500 million users, over the course of a 16-year lifespan. Post Blackstone acquisition, Badoo and Bumble's executive teams were brought together, and through that course, I became the Group Chief Marketing Officer, overseeing both the Badoo app and the Bumble app.
Got it. And how big was the team when you joined?
When I joined, the company overall was probably around 400 people, 500 people, somewhere in that range. The marketing team was very lean. There was an existing Bumble marketing team, which was, I think, around 40 or 50 people. But the team that I was specifically responsible for at Badoo was very small. We were talking about, 10 to 12 people by the time I joined, a mix of regional marketers, acquisition marketers, so, sort of people running user acquisition, and some light CRM. But it was really a process of two chapters. One was building a fully functional Badoo marketing team across multiple disciplines in order to drive monthly active user growth and all of our subsequent metrics. And then post-merger, really when Badoo and Bumble really came together in one executive management team and ultimately one company, it really became a process of unifying the Badoo and Bumble marketing teams, understanding the pieces we wanted to keep app specific, and some of the areas that we wanted to have a shared services model where we would centralize a lot of the resource and ensure that the apps could leverage, for instance, the growth marketing team, which operated at the platform level. So really not at the app level, but really across the company.
Yeah, got it. That makes perfect sense. And actually, I wanted to ask, what tools did your team use? You said that you were combining these two teams, and I guess you had some pretty sophisticated infrastructure to get accurate data and to use this data in your marketing efforts. So can you tell us a little bit about this marketing infrastructure setup?
Sure thing. For the most part, the culture of the company had really been, let's build it ourselves. And so, while there are, for many companies, amazing off-the-shelf solutions to really bring together an ecosystem of vendors that all work congruently together, given its history, going back to 2006, the company had really invested quite a lot into homegrown solutions to manage a lot of our analytics, to manage our experimentation approach. And so these were homegrown tools by the internal engineering team. Some of the things that, we thought deeply about, and this was a combination of sort of back-end engineers plus our data engineers, was really about, how do we sort of help drive automation and user acquisition as a good example, and understand, between the multiple objectives that we have within the world of balancing, a dating ecosystem, it's partially, of course, driving return on investment. It's one of the most important criteria that we have. But we have to take more of a holistic view in terms of the outcomes of user growth in a marketplace like dating. Gender balance being a critical one, and ensuring that you always are maintaining a healthy level of ecosystem balance across the regions in which your ecosystem exists. And so, how you acquire those different audiences, how you're willing to spend, and how you manage that was something that was ultimately driven by humans in the end, but greatly assisted by a lot of the tooling that we had to make those decisions faster, given the scale and complexity of the business.
Got it. And do I get it right that it's only subscription monetization model, or there are some other additional monetization streams there?
There's really three monetization streams. The vast majority is subscription. And the way that I describe subscription is really, get to what you want faster is probably the best way to think about it. That means unlimited swipes. That means being able to see who liked you. But we also have another vertical of user-driven revenue, which is really around consumables. And in consumables, this is really the opportunity to show yourself to more people, to have our matchmaking algorithm showcase you to more people, thereby maximizing your exposure and your opportunities. And the third, which is more specific to Badoo, but a smaller component of the business, is really advertising revenue. It isn't the main driver of revenue for a business like Bumble Inc., but it was still a material part of the business, and one that is still important to this day. The vast majority of the focus in terms of driving the output metrics that are now reported on the public markets is really how many payers, and really sort of focused around the subscriber growth numbers. And then, of course, average revenue per paying user, and really sort of that being a function of, what type of subscriber tier that they're at, as well as what's the tenure of that subscriber.
And the question related to that, and it would be super interesting to know, how did you approach the pricing? How do you decide what subscription price and duration, for example, to choose? Because it kind of can tremendously impact your revenue.
Yeah. This was not a huge area of ownership that I had. There was a revenue team specifically in Bumble that was focused around this type of pricing experimentation, on an almost constant basis and at the very regional level. I do think fundamentally some of the areas that I did have visibility into in terms of how we thought about this, for instance, was really tiering and ensuring that we were able to offer, not just one size fits all subscription package, but really start to break out the offering of our subscription packages to different levels to make sure that we were maximizing the opportunity in terms of payer penetration, to make sure that those that perhaps did not purchase into the price of the original subscription package at a lower price with limited functionality would be able to buy into it. I think there were many sort of experimentation frameworks that were built into how the prices of those tiers specifically were ultimately decided. And certainly sort of understanding what the yield curves look like matters greatly to that, but it was much more in a different team altogether.
So do I get it right that like the number of subscribers was this North Star metric, or there was some different maybe North Star metric?
It is a freemium business, which means there are more considerations than necessarily the number of paying users. And the average revenue per paying user. Thinking about monthly active users for us was really critical, because the health of the ecosystem is what drives engagement. It's what drives retention, and then will ultimately drive someone to become a paying user, someone who wants to accelerate their time to success within this vibrant ecosystem. And so, I think we thought about, the business more multidimensionally. Revenue is, of course, a very important component of our output, but I think sort of holistic user growth was really critical. Understanding ecosystem balance and engagement of that ecosystem was sort of a second critical pillar. And then, of course, third was creating subscription products that delivered great value to our members and to our customers, and ensured that they were able to achieve what they wanted faster, better, quicker. was, I think, pillar 3. So I think for any freemium product out there, it is really important to ensure that there's balance between these priorities. Particularly in freemium, you don't want to see, for instance, retention of your paying and subscribing users staying strong while simultaneously decaying the retention of your free users, right? That type of gap opening up, means you are withdrawing value from, the free side of your business in order to support your paid side, which has long-term consequences. So that type of balancing is always critical, at least within a freemium and certainly a marketplace product.
Got it. So on top of monitoring number of paid subscribers, you also paid a lot of attention to the retention rate just of the users overall, like probably 30-day retention rate and other standard mobile retention metrics.
Yeah, I mean, it's, really how do you decompose MAU into, new users, retained users, reactivated users within the retained user bucket, really understanding the retention curve from early to sort of recurring retention. And then there was that's sort of the free side of the business, and not necessarily free, sorry, both free and paid, encompassing everyone. And then there was a second component, which was what was then the conversion of those free users into paying users, and then ultimately, what is the pay rate, the revenue per paying user amongst those paying users. That sort of is the generalized model, I think, by which we measured the business, we goaled the business, and we drove growth inside the business.
Did you have some kind of, automatic dashboard sales that you received on a daily basis? You review them to see where the business is moving. How did it work from the analytics setup perspective?
Yeah, so we were very lucky to have a phenomenal reporting analytics team, which is really the team that is responsible for ensuring the business had visibility on the key views against that sort of multidimensional framework that I described. I would say almost every team inside their business had a different perspective of the business that they were monitoring. I certainly had my 5 to 6 dashboards that were basically what I looked at every morning, before I really did anything else to just understand the state of affairs. That was looking at all of those metrics that I described, both on a nominal basis, as well as looking at week over week, month over month, year over year growth rates. And just understanding the trajectory. I mean, apart from describing the business and decomposing user growth along those metrics we described, we have to remember this is a hyper-regional business, a hyper-local business, much like ride sharing is. So understanding that at the local level was also a critical consideration for us to make sure that we were not losing sight around the customer experience through a top-down global view. It's very easy to average many of these numbers and have a view of the business that is actually quite different from the sort of bottoms up view from the local level that is actually describing a very different type of ecosystem, user experience, or growth trajectory. And so I think it was really a mix of keeping, and understanding top level trends, top level themes, but there was a constant deep dive into local levels to understand how things were actually performing on the ground.
So what do you think about the competition in this vertical? I think dating is super competitive vertical, and there are a lot of apps in this industry, but still there are just few that are really succeeded and grew to huge revenue. Bumble is one of them. I guess Tinder is another well-known app, and that's mostly it. There are two clear leaders. And essentially, the product and the features can be copied a lot, right? So I understand that Bumble has different value proposition compared to Tinder, let's say, but still, you can go out and copy the app, and you don't need a lot of resources to build it. So how do you win in this competitive market? Is it your analytical driven approach to that? Is it marketing secrets? How to win in this competitive vertical?
It's a tough business because the hardest part to replicate is the community. This is the most challenging aspect for any dating startup that's out there trying to break into a hyper competitive business. Tinder was the category leader of the new mobile era, and it continues to drive fantastic growth because it is really sort of educating so much of the market into the sort of the new standard of how mobile dating really operates. Bumble's special sauce is really that it always started with brand, and it always started by addressing the needs of women in dating. Women in particular are the ones that have a less safe experience, who have been more boxed away in specific gender roles that have been propagated through culture for thousands of years. Technology can be a force for good to help unseat many of those conventions and to demonstrate that there is a healthier, more equitable way to approach relationship building when women make the first move. Why that matters in the world of community building is that now Bumble is perceived as the safest dating option for women. And so in a marketplace that tends to have more men than women in sort of a heteronormative sense, you're building a brand that is really designed and where the product is designed with the needs of women in mind, gives Bumble an unfair advantage to be able to drive and defend that community as it grows around the world. For any new player that's out there, they're going to have to figure out within the dynamics of dating, how do they provide a unique value proposition that is really solving a fundamental customer need, and that is going to drive lots of people to talk about you in a really exciting way. Bumble has done so much for women, not only through the world of dating, but through the lens of policy making and all other components of women's life, that they have an unfair share of voice that they can leverage to be able to grow that community. And I think in the world of dating apps, it's very easy to copy the screens. It's very easy to copy the functionality. It is really challenging to not only get that network growing, but really scale it. That's the hard part.
And how do you approach that? Do you have any advice to companies, maybe not only in the dating vertical and other verticals, how they can think of starting building this community around their app, around their product?
I think in the case of any other sort of, at least if we talk about the world of consumer for subscription for a moment, it really is about having a hyper clear sense of the audience that you are trying to pursue in the early days, right? Many consumer products often go too large, and that creates a lack of focus in how they refine the solution they are bringing to market in a way that is hyper simple and hyper clear. Bumble succeeded because it found that there were women who were not being served by the experience of other dating products where they felt unsafe. And so Bumble built its product, its message, and its brand hyper specifically for those women, and has really continued to do so ever since then. Now, women is half the global population, not exactly sort of a very specific audience, but where Bumble was first propagated, where it was first brought into the market, was really amongst US colleges that were the early adopters of other dating products. And if you think about almost any other product that's out there from a consumer subscription standpoint, I would suggest that being really, really focused on that audience will help you sharpen, refine your value proposition, and ultimately the experience you deliver that is really critical to win. I mean, I think Sam Altman from Y Combinator talked about it, which is, you have to be able to build unfair loyalty and build a product that is worthy of conversation. And the way you build something that is worthy of conversation is you've got to blow someone's socks off that you solve their problem so incredibly well. That's really hard to do at that remarkable level for everyone. But if you can get focused, you can accomplish that.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also wanted to ask you about the mix of the marketing channels. Can you share a little bit about what worked best? Was it performance driven, Facebook ads, other channels? Yeah.
So this is an evolving world because of the sort of major changes that are going on in privacy. But I think fundamentally, I would sort of describe in broad strokes that you had Bumble, which was much more brand driven, still had a very strong performance pillar, but the majority of energy, the majority of effort, and the majority of ways in which we showed up in a consumer's life came through brand. In the Badoo scenario, we had such a global business that it was very performance driven. But Bumble, because of its shorter history, had just fewer markets to operate in, and it could go deeper in those markets through brand. Whereas in the Badoo scenario, we were advertising across a huge, almost every region of the world across a huge number of markets. So it's just fundamentally the balance between brand and performance is different. The results of some of the major changes we've seen, like IDFA on Apple and ultimately third-party cookies with Google sunsetting whenever Google decides to do it in 24 or beyond, is that there is really a full funnel view of marketing that I think is really necessary. And that is to say that these two disciplines have always sat in different teams with different budgets, dislocated from one another, whereas companies that are going to succeed are the ones that really have an integrated full funnel view. Having a measurement framework that is really strong to drive growth, whether that is media mix models, incrementality solutions, there are a number of techniques that you can use to bring those teams together. And so they had different strategies, Badoo and Bumble, but I think philosophically, how we were weaving together what was going on between brand and performance, which was a transition that I think was really stimulated by the privacy framework changes, is one that every company is going to have to go down. It is no longer going to be successful for a company to think about, I've got a PPC budget, maybe I do some social on the side, I'm going to experiment, with, some really terrible traditional advertising and have no connection between these very different disciplines. You have to understand them as complementary to each other. And so the major questions become, how do each of my channels interact with one another? And how does the mix of channels that I deliver also drive incremental organic growth? And I think those are the two questions I would encourage anyone thinking about growth for the business, and particularly spending money and demonstrating return on investment, to consider. And that way you're not putting all of your money into down funnel channels and leaving massive incrementality off the table by investing up funnel as well.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Those are very good questions, but I think it's getting, it wasn't easy even before when IDFA was available, right? To figure out how users interacted with the brand when they saw an ad and so on. And now it's like becoming virtually impossible. And hence I think we see like decline in Facebook revenue and more apps using Apple search ads where you can at least get accurate attribution data. So I completely agree with you that companies need to try to figure this out, but currently it looks like the technology is very complex to get accurate data.
I think it's a big movement, right? If you're trying to follow a customer from the first impression through the last impression and trying to rebuild a multi-touch attribution model, that is just not going to be successful anymore, right? We've got to think about these audiences at the cohort level and understanding, whether it's through incrementality or other probabilistic solutions, how we understand the deployments of channels, how do different mixes deliver sort of net incremental impact? Many innovators in this space, Measured.com, Recast on MMM, a number of players are out there really helping companies, whether you're an e-commerce and direct-to-consumer company, whether you're a mobile subscription business, to really solve some of these challenges absent of the old school world of deterministic user-level data.
Got it. Yeah. I want to be mindful of your time, and I wanted to ask just several more questions. And if I remember correctly, you have an MBA degree, right, from INSEAD?
I do, yes.
Do you think it was useful? Do you advise like young people who aspire to be, let's say, CMO of large companies to go for MBA, or what's your advice on that?
It's a good question. I'm going to have to give you two answers, the short answer and the long answer. The short answer is it depends. And I'll tell you the long answer, which is I thought I was going to learn business, whatever that means. I thought I was going to go in and learn accounting and finance. And you spend the first 4 months of that certainly learning that. What I walked away from INSEAD, I think, was a set of skill sets that were much softer than what I thought I was going in with. It was building a global network. It was learning how to communicate across cultural, both organizations and countries. And those things become more and more valuable the more senior you become in whatever role that you do. I'm sitting now in a private equity firm that has offices, all around Europe with management teams and companies from, all different countries across Europe. as well as beyond. And having that experience has been indispensably valuable to be able to forge partnerships with our portfolio teams, to be able to speak their language and understand how to do business in their language. That is really valuable. But if you're someone who is much more of, the things that I need in order to succeed are a set of practical skill sets, whether that is, going down a product management career, whether that's, anything else that has, let's call it sort of more functional skill sets needed to unlock the next stage, I wouldn't recommend it. So I think it really depends on what you're trying to achieve in your career. From my standpoint, I didn't have a grand plan going into an MBA. I just thought it was the thing that I should do. I had come from the world of traditional advertising and felt like the millions of dollars I was helping Coca-Cola plan, I had no idea how the hell it, translated into business for Coca-Cola. But I think that the things that I gained on the other side of INSEAD are, have been really valuable for my career and where I've been headed in my career working in such a global landscape.
Got it. Yeah, I've been thinking about doing MBA sometime. A long time ago, but this train has departed.
There are executive MBA programs you can do to get the sort of condensed flavor of the learnings, lessons, and network, which maybe
probably I should check this out as well. Listen, anything you personally would like to speak about, to share?
So I think for one of the amazing things about a podcast like this is really the community that comes out the other end. And for me, great opportunity to participate today. I would encourage anyone to listen, to go out there and go find and interact with people that you can learn from. So much of the original world of mobile was really about invention and figuring things out. We now live in a world where, a lot of these lessons can be, to a degree, shortcutted by hearing the stories of other people. I'm involved in a ton of Slack communities. I'm involved, sort of working on the ground in mentorship programs. And so, I would encourage anyone who's listening and looking to learn to try and reach out. Don't be afraid. You'd be shocked at how communicative and how willing people are to give back in this wonderful world of growth.
Awesome. Yeah, I completely agree with you. We're now currently based in London. We'll probably try to organize also some offline events here to just meet people in the community, mobile app developers, marketers, basically everyone who is interested in all this. And I guess my last question is how our listeners can find you online. Are you on Twitter, on LinkedIn?
I've become pretty quiet on the internet outside of LinkedIn, so you can find me Dominic Gallello on LinkedIn. I don't have a Twitter. I have a private Instagram for posting stupid photos of my child and my dog, which if you're interested, go for it. But the best way is of course to sort of reach out and always to schedule a call. Following is one thing, but having a conversation is another. So encourage anyone that wants to talk to don't be shy and don't hesitate to reach out.
Got it. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Have a good day.
Appreciate that.